Thanks for the introduction, Brinda. Greetings, everyone. In today's session, we'll talk about MDM using BES model. Today's agenda is the overview of business entities. What is provisioning tool? What is business entity services? Some we'll see look into a little bit on the business entity architecture. What is business entity views? What is business entity transformations? Task how to configure task and triggers around business entities. Business entity related APIs, how to use the generated visitors and the WADL files. Business entity extensions, that is nothing but the customizations around your business entities. After business entities, we'll look a little bit on the E360, that is our next gen UI based on business entity model. And lastly, we'll see business entity versus our traditional subject area differences. First of all, business entity overview. Business entity is defining object based on the use case. Business entities represents entities in significance to a org. Org define business entity types to represent customer, supplier, etc. But in current MDM build, business entity is logical grouping of base objects in a single entity. So, so basically, it's a aggregation of different base objects into a single unit. Business entity is a tree structure with unlimited depth and one root node. So the business entities are something that can be compared to our traditional subject areas. Business entity services are built on business entities for create, update, and delete operations. If you see on the left side, like I have a diagram from MDM Hub schema view. So this is our party model. So you see party and different BOs associated with party based on based on hub configuration. On the right side, we have built a business entity model where person being root. We have different child entities associated with it. Next is provisioning tool. So provisioning tool is very important because provisioning tool is used for business entity modeling. So I want to create a business entity model. I have to log into provisioning tool in order to create a business entity model. Apart from creating business entity models, based on your business entity design, you can create a UI E360 applications where you can have like different layouts for different business users. Next is business entity services. Business entity services manipulates data based on the business entities and business entity views. Business entity service is a open structure that can be configured on the fly. Business entity services are chain of steps. Result of each step is passed to next step as an input, and result of the last step what you get, that is passed to the caller. Also, if you see the business entity calls, suppose if you fire a write or read calls, internally it uses the SIF API. That does not mean like say a business entity calls are equivalent to SIF calls. There are a lot of advantages using business entity service. So we strongly recommend customers to use business entity services. The way it is different than traditional SIF calls. So each SIF call does authentication, but though business entity service calls internally uses SIF calls, authentication only happens once. That way, it has a performance is always g- better compared to SIF calls. Next is we'll see like business entity architecture. So if you see this diagram on the top level, you will have your UI. If you are using out of box MDM solutions, so you'll have your E360 application. If customer is using any custom application, and from there we are calling different business entity services. So they will also come on the top part. So once you make the business, so the protocol what we follow for business entity services are REST, EJB, and SOAP based. So from the UI, when you fire a call, you have to follow one of the protocols. Like you can fire your call using the REST, EJB, or SOAP. Internally, yeah. So you call the business entities, business entity service calls, and internally business entity calls are translated to base objects. So next is business entity views and transformations. Business entity views are needed because if you have a business entity created which might have like hundreds of fields, but business might not be interested in all of them. They might be interested in few fields from the business entities. That is where business entity views are useful. You create a condensed, simple version of a view based on your business entities. So what it does is it expose only the necessary data to the business process, and you don't end up like processing unwanted data. So so also business entity views can be we can create many business entity views on a single business entity. Next is transformations. So transformations, the purpose of transformation is to define the rules to map the fields from one object to another. So for example, I have a business entity. Based on that, if you create a business entity view, so for that on that view, if you want to do a read or search operation, so you need to create a business transformation of type from business entity to business entity view. Similarly, if you want to create a do a write operation, you do a business entity view to business entity. If you want to do a business entity to business entity, suppose this is useful if you want to do any cleanse operation. So that is where B2B transformation is used. Here is a simple example. On the left, if you see, I have my business entity where person is root. It has first name, last name. It has few child entities. Based on my entity, on the right side, I have created a business entity views. So this view, if you see, it has fields from root as well as child. Based on the business case, you take the only required fields, you create a view. Also, as I mentioned, it will have you can create n number of business entity views on one specific business entity. So now I have logged into my provisioning tool. In provisioning tool, once you log in, so on the left side, if you see, there are components for your modeling, creating transformations, task and extension. Let's first check modeling part. If you go to modeling, if you click on the drop down, you see the reference entities. Reference entities are nothing but your lookup table, then actual business entities. Then you create business entity views and the relationships. Let's check one of the business entity, for example. I go to person. You see, I have a person. This is my person entity. This is based on my C party base object in hub, and it has I have we have like different fields, and we have like one to many relationships, and also you will see there is a so if you have any reference entity, like for example here I'm using Elegenter, a reference entity, so that is also you can configure. Now at the field level, if you want to see configuration, let's check birth date. So, birthday is one of the field from your base object. So if you see on the right side, like there are different properties, but we are not going all of them. Uh, let's quickly check few important URI. This is very important if you are using a namespace of custom data type. So based on the URI, yeah, here you specify for by default it is commonj.sdo. If you select date here, this is one of the new feature in 10.3 HF1 onwards. If you, for example, you have a E360 application where you have a default date format, but for this birth date, if you want to override the default date format and if you want to have a custom date field for birth date, that is something in application level you configure. There is a setting where you can where you can configure what date format you want, and you map that specific format here. Next is, if I want to if you want this field to be contributed in your smart search, you say like searchable. If you want to configure this field as a filterable, you say like filters. Next is transformations. You see, as we discussed in the presentation, there are different kind of transformations can be configured. First is business entity to views, where you configure if you have if this is used when you do a read or search operations. So in the transformations section, you say like all fields what you map from want to map from business entity to business entity views, you can configure it here. In the groups you mention all the child entities what you have at business entity level. Next is view to business entities. This is used when we are doing a write operation. Business entity to business entity, this is used like when if you want to define a cleanse function. So business entity to business entity useful. Business entity to XML and XML to business entity, this is used when you have a DAS configuration. Let's jump back to our PPT for the next section. Next is task and triggers. So in the 10.3 we do have a lot of changes around task and trigger configuration on business entities. So on the left side, like I have highlighted all the available triggers. For example, create B trigger. So if you want to create any record in system, and then at that point, if you say like, okay, I don't want to make it a golden record, create a workflow for me. So you create a trigger and you say like, okay, start a workflow to and assign the task to this users. So we will look into configuration shortly. Also on the UI side, the way the task is displayed, we do have a lot of customization. Task managers, we had a hurdle in the older build where the view what we used to see there was no configuration like to change the view, right? The order, what order you want to see the fields, or the fields unwanted fields if you don't want to see some specific field, there was there was no way to control that. Now in 10.3 you have on task manager you can control the view what you see on the task manager. Similar ability you have for task inboxes, where you pick and choose like, okay, these are the fields I want to see in my inbox. On top of that, in task inbox you can have you can have more than one task inbox for the same user. So you can basically have two task inboxes, one for your all approval task, another for all merge and merge kind of tasks. So here, if you see in the provisioning tool, I'm showing the configuration around tasks. So this is the default workflow, and I'm saying the event is create B. For create B, create B trigger. What you do, your system should create a task where you say like what is the task type, what is the process. It should use invoke from the ActiveOS around that. And also you mention like what all roles and what all business entities you want to use this configuration. Next is business entity configuration tables. So in the provisioning tool, we saw like how to create business entity, how to create transformation, how to do task configurations. So finally, whatever you configure and say like publish from your provisioning tool, what happens? All the configurations done in the UI, it gets stored in a table called CRPOS table in form of XML. So XML in the backend, XML will have all configurations. How to know which configuration is coming from where? What we have done, like we have put, we have bundled similar. We have put a different config for different configurations. We have put different entries. For example, if you see in this screenshot, I have a XML entry for composite object. I have another XML entry for task configurations. I have another XML entry for my REST services. So if you see anything, so if you want to review something, okay, you configured something in the UI and the backend, it's not working, you can very well go and backend and export this blob data, this XML data, and you can review what might have gone wrong. Second important table, CRepos component instance. It holds all your E360 related configurations. The way you know which part is like, which configuration holds what data, you know it through the type name. Few tips around the business entity configurations. We do support the backend XML modification. Suppose right now you find a use case where in UI you cannot modify data, you cannot make that change because UI does not have that capability. We can do at certain scenario, we do allow like backend modification. You come to this table, you change the XML, and you re-upload it back. But you may need to be careful. Any bad XML entry in these tables can stop your services, right? So what happens whenever services are restarted? It does a validation of CRepos COCS config table. So any invalid entry will stop service to bring up all MDM services. Also if business entity, there might be a question like, okay, I configured my business entity configurations in one environment, how to use it in other environment. So answer is very simple. Like what you do, like you follow the general the standard process. You generate your business entities, you export your change list and import in other environment. All export change list will have all CRepos means business entity related configurations stored in COCS config. Next is REST interface to business entity services. On the left side, if you see, these are the protocols what we support for invoking business entity services. We'll focus more on the REST services. REST services are best suited for JavaScript application. And the formats what we support is JSON and XML. So we strongly recommend customers to use the JSON format in the newer build. And the methods are like pretty much standard what is supported from REST protocol. Get, put, post, post, delete. Get is used to retrieve the information about a record or a task or a file. Post is used for both create and update a task or a root record or a child record, etc. Put, we do support put for updating the root record or the child entities or the task. But in the upcoming builds, we are planning to deprecate put call. So what we are saying, for both create and update scenario, we are supposed to use post call. So also delete is to delete a root record, child record, or a file. And the WSDLs, okay, so I have created my business entity model. How to find the WSDL files? So what you do, like for it follows HTTP for being REST, it follows the HTTP protocol. You use your host port and CMX CS files. You'll have all WSDL files available. Also through the HTTP call, if you want to fire any get call, what we should use, you should use your host port CMX constant value CMX CS, then your ORS ID followed by B name, ORO ID object, etc. So here we have put a screenshot. Now I have generated my business entities. So if you go to browser and put your host port followed by CMX CS file, you'll have all the business entity service related APIs available. You see you'll get like two files. One is YDL and the WSDL. YDL file is the XML definition for your REST services, REST parameters. Similarly, WSDL is XML definition for your SOAP based services, SOAP parameters. So if you want to use your REST services, all you need to do, you can download this YDL file and put it in a SOAP UI somewhere all available services for different business entities like REST get you can see there. As we are talking about different REST services, there is one important thing that we should definitely discuss: the right behavior of the right BE call. Right? So if you see in this exam here, what I'm showing, suppose if I want to create any entity, all you need to do in your right BE call, you need to pass the parameters what you want to use. For example, here first name, last name, whatever parameters you want to use, you fire a REST call, it will create an entity. But think of a situation, okay, I have created, now I want to do an update. So if you fire it like, so first time if you fire this call, it will create. Second time also if you do this kind of call, again it will be treated as create only. Right? In eh, for MDM to know it's a update call, so that is where change summary is important. The way system knows it's a update call is in the request you need to pass the dollar original tag. So once it is passed in your, so if you have a call like this where dollar original is mentioned, system will know that okay, I have a update request. Also another important thing, delta detection logic is not available in business entity service APIs. So if you expect like okay, I loaded data first time first, so if you are looking for similar behavior what we have in the batch, we do not have similar thing available for the API calls. Now we'll see some small demos around REST and the EJB calls we have been talking about on the business entities. So for the EJB calls, this is like first time if you are creating like suppose you have a custom application. From there, if you want to fire EJB call for the REST based operation like create, and delete, update. The simplest example is if you have a resource kit. If you go to resource kit, like we do have a sample project available. In that project we have you should see like dynamic SDOs and generated SDOs. So we can use either of these two. So yeah, for business entities operations, like we do use the SDO framework. So yes, dynamic SDOs is something on the runtime, and another approach could be like you generate all SDOs, all required schema before firing any call to MDM. If I go to my Eclipse project, if you see, I do have dynamic SDO code loaded here. We will not do code walkthrough here, but one important thing I just wanted to mention here. For example, if you are trying to do a create person request here, so the parameters what you pass like for first name, whatever values you are setting, first name, last name, all code should be within begin and change begin. If you see, get change summary, begin login and end login. If you put any code outside this, system will not know that you are trying to pass that parameter, and it will skip that. Some example on the browser side, if I what I was saying in the presentation, if you use your host name, port, say, CMX file, all business entity API related files are generated. You can find them. You can very well download this VADL or WSDL file and put it in a SOAP project, and you are good to fire your right different REST calls. Another example I wanted to show for a specific business entity, if you want to action equal to meta, if you want to get metadata details, it can be achieved on the browser. So another example, if for a specific ORS, if you want to get a metadata entity details, so that is also we do support. Now at the record level, you see in this call what we are doing. For a specific ORS, I'm saying like person is my entity, and I'm passing the row ID object. For this row ID object, all relevant information is sent back as a response. Similarly, for a task configurations, if I want to get details, that is also from the browser we can get. Here you say like I'm saying, oh, give me all the BPM metadata details. Right? So all configurations related tasks like what all task type are to configure, what all triggers what we have. So that is also you can see firing this call. Another example, now I want to see, okay, I have a task already configured. I want to see for a specific task, what is there, what is a human task, where it is pending. So those details uh, you can see from browser itself. Now I want to show some quick example from the Postman. So from browser, I have come to Postman. I'm trying to fire a similar get call. For a person entity, I have the row ID object and I want to see the depth. Depth is very important. Like it says like until what level you want to see. Here you can mention instead of 2, you can say 4, and it will go until like depth 4, and it will give you information in response up to level 4. Another example is I want to fire a REST call, but I want to do a read operation, but don't want to pass all information in by request body. You can see in that case you can directly use the read CO, and in the body you can pass all information, and in the response it gives you detail regarding it. Another example I wanted to quickly show. So I don't have the UI configured from any custom application using the REST call. If you want to create a task, that is also doable. You see in this example, I fire this call and it will create a task. It has created a process for me. If you go to ActiveOS, you see you have a task created there. External calls are used for custom validation for business entities. You can build a custom logic while doing a transforming business entities. So and you can see this it something similar to IDD user exit, but it's not exactly same thing. IDD user exit is restricted to the UI, but external calls works outside UI. So if you have built a external call for your business entity, if from the third party application also, if you are firing any call, it will external calls will be on it. So idea is very simple, creating external calls. It is loosely integrated with MDM through the SOAP services. So you build your SOAP services and you plug in on a specific service phase. So you see in the diagram, we are saying these are the entry points. Earlier we discussed the business entity service calls are it's a chain of steps. So external calls can be plugged in at any point in between here, right? So you build your custom logic, deploy as a SOAP service, and you plug in that custom logic in one of the service phases. This configuration comes from provisioning tool, and to configure external calls we do have a KB if you want to refer. So as discussed in the last slide, these are business entity services. These are the plugin points. You can put your custom logic uh, in between somewhere here. And yeah, when you fire any call, it goes to the external SOAP service provider, get the does the custom law validation and comes back and gives you response. So external calls. If you're first timer, if you want to implement a custom logic, in our resource kit we do have sample code. You see right now I'm projecting a sample code that we have in resource kit itself. This is used for this code is built for custom validation. Okay, person, when you create any person entity, it needs to have an address. So what you do, like you take the sample project, export as a ER file, and you deploy in the same or other JVM where MDM is running. So you took the sample code from the resource kit, yeah, you exported as ER file, and you uh, deploy in the server. Now you come to provisioning tool, and for external calls, you see there is externals extensions tab. First thing what you need to do, you need to register. First, you need to register the WSDL file. Here you see once your SOAP services are deployed, you you need to use the URL. You see in my example, this is BES external calls. That is what I have configured. So I take that URL and register it here. Next step, based on that, like I go to SOAP services. In SOAP services, I need to register the services port at the what is the endpoint. So these informations I provide here. And lastly, based on these informations, you create a external calls. So external calls, for we have to mention for which all business entities you are going to use this external calls, and at what service phase you want to inject this custom logic. You see there, if I click on create here, these are the various steps where you can inject your custom logic, and you are ready to go. So now I have built my external, deployed my external code, external call, custom code. Now, if I don't have UI, so don't have UI built, I would like to verify like that custom logic is working or not. So you come to your postman and fire a post call, and here you see like I'm passing a person entity only. I'm not passing anything on the address. What should happen if I fire this call? It should send me a response and saying a validation error. A person needs to have at least one address, and that's what I expect. So now in this call, now I'm passing address as well as person detail. So now my calls should go through, and this validates that my custom logic is working outside E360 UI also. Next is Entity 360. So Entity 360 is next gen UI for business users based on your business entities. It's a modular and customizable and rich user interface experience. This offers different views depending on the entity types, user roles, etc. So business entity has capability of creating different layouts for the same entity for different users. So data steward, if they log in, they for the same entity they can have different view, and senior manager, if they log in, they will have different views. In case if I don't create any layouts, what will happen? System will provide you a default templates, and you can use that as well. You can do a create edit layouts are configurable for the each layout. So apart from business entities, you can very well configure some external components, and around like in the home page, if you want to create a link for the Twitter, Google, something like that, that is also doable. Apart from that, if you want to create any secondary component, right, like if you want for the business entity on the same layer, same page, if I want to see I want to see on the right side what are the related records, what are the similar records, or or like a related task around that. That is also can be configured. Search. So on business entities, we strongly recommend you to use the Elasticsearch Smart Search configuration. Apart from that, we in 10.3 for business entities also query based search is supported. So you can create a business entity based on based the direct. You can create a business entity search, and you can select some specific fields, and you can save those. And once next time you log in, you use those saved queries. Let's go back to the demo. Now I've logged into provisioning tool. Now business entity configuration, we are almost done. Now we'll be checking how to create a business E360 application. First, I will click on the application. This is my MDM sample. This is my application, where you define what kind of searches you want to configure, what is your source system, what is the timeout, and this field is very very important. Uh, if you uncheck this uncheck this field, what will happen for the business entities? You will not see the default business entity views. You have to have your layout or view created that has to be used. So by default, it is checked. So yeah, if you don't have any views or layout created, you can use the default business entities. Here you define what all business entities you want to use. This is also very important. The search configuration. Suppose you do a search on person, the search result what you see, you don't want to see the default fields coming from the business entity. For search specific also you can create a view, and those views can be mapped here. Next is display field. 10.3 HF onwards, as I mentioned in the beginning, you can have the custom date fields here, and it can be mapped to a specific field in your E360 application. If you have need of different fields using different date formats, you create them here, and at the field level in the business entity you map them. Components. Next is components. Here you see external links. So suppose if you want to create a external link in your home page, what you do, you create a javascript, your javascript or html here, and in your home page layout you can map saying like, okay, I want to see the external link when user login, they should see external link that can take them to, like, different application, uh, and different application. Task inbox, as I mentioned, task inbox is configurable. What all fields, what you want to see here, so that can be configured. More than one task inbox is supported. On the secondary components, as I mentioned, like similar records or get related records, and the along with the primary information on the entity. If you want to configure that, you can configure. Layout designers very important. This is where you create a layout based for different users, different layouts you create. First one, homepage. I have a sample homepage where you can configure different task. I have mapped different task boxes here. If you click on edit, it tells you what configuration we are using. I'm saying like, for anyone you use this homepage, but you can restrict this homepage view for specific role. Next is entity level. I have created one view for the person entity, and if you see this configuration, it can be also customized, uh, at what level for create record or view, or what level you want to see, then what roles controls it, uh, and if you want to create if you want to move this layout based on the specific view, that also can be done. Now I'd like to show you the E360 application that we have configured. So now I've logged into my application. Once you log in the home page, as I showed you my configuration, I have different inboxes configured. So these are task configured. If you click on any of the task, it takes you to the task manager. Where you can review your task and take appropriate action. Another thing, you can go to query tab. As is mentioned in the business entities, we do support saved query now. So I've created a query and saved it. If you run, it will give you results based on your search criteria. And yeah, this is pretty much. Now I'd like to create one new record, and I'd like to quickly show you a quick troubleshooting tips. Yeah, so now you put some entries here and try to save it. So it is failing because of the external call configuration what I have. It expects me to have a address along with the person information. So I will go ahead and do that, but in the meantime, what I wanted to show you, yeah. So if you want to see the requests, request what UI fires to API when we create any record, when any so, so if you try to save this and say go to here and say save, and this pop-up is coming. This pop-up is coming because we have configured a uh, task configuration for create B11. So I say task is created. So if you see uh, this call, so you see this all request parameters sent to server for creating this record. You can find the request payload information here. So this is helpful for doing a basic troubleshooting if you are trying to create any record, and if because of some reason it is failing, what you can do, you can enable your developer tool, and you can see the actual request payload being sent to server and what could be error. So some information, some hint you might get from here. Let's quickly discuss about business entities and the subject area UI framework differences. In business entity, we use for API, we do use business entity services. Subject area, we use SIF. In the modeling what we create for business entity, it can be used. The model is available for E360 UI or outside UI also through RESTful APIs. Subject area configuration, that is subject area is only available at the UI level. The workflow is what you create from E360 that can be managed within UI or outside application, as I showed you one example where you can from Postman itself you can create a task. Subject area task workflow is triggered manually from the UI. Customizations, use of external calls, it is in business entity it is the external calls. So external calls can be used in UI or outside UI. We saw example of doing that. Subject area, the customizations are done through user exits, and those are available only at the UI level. Search options, business entities, we do support smart search using Elasticsearch, name3 search query. Subject area is available using name3 search query and exactdb. Import and export. Import is currently in 10.3 build. It's not supported in business entity, but it is part of 10.4. But in subject area, we do have support for import and export. User interface. User interface is more flexible in a business entity model. What we saw, like where you can have like different layouts, and the task also, the task manager and the inboxes, like you can choose and you can pick the fields what you want to see. Subject area is more restrictive, very low in terms of customizations. Product roadmap, all configurations or all enhancements are planned for the entity 360. Subject area, only critical bug fixes are planned going forward. That is all I wanted to cover as part of this session. We are open for Q&A now. Thank you.